is Indira Guzman, and I'm here with the Community Language Co-op. And this evening, the organizers of this event have made a commitment to language justice. What that means is that we want everyone to engage and participate in the language of their heart, or in the language that they feel most comfortable in. So there will be parts of this conversation that will be in Spanish. So if anybody does not speak Spanish, we ask that you come and pick up one of these gadgets over here. It is a receiver and a headphone. And every time someone says anything in Spanish, you just pop it by your ear and you'll be able to hear the interpretation into English. So we want English and Spanish speakers who don't speak bilingual, both languages, who aren't bilingual, to please pick one of these up. We also have interpretation on Zoom. So for our Zoom participants, if they can please click on the icon on the bottom of the screen that says interpretation. Once interpretation is turned on, you can then select the language that you prefer to engage in. If you're going too fast, if someone is speaking too fast and I can't keep up, I'm going to do this sign, like slow down, take a deep breath or something so I could catch up to you. So if you watch me doing this, please catch the presenter's attention and do this with me so that they can slow down. If I can't hear, I'm going to raise my hand and point a 1, just so that we could have one person speaking at a time. I don't want to have to choose to whom to interpret for. And I think we're all set. I'm going to do a quick sound check just to make sure that everyone can hear me on their headset. Anyone not here? No? Okay, we're good. Gracias.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tara Biter-Fleur. I'm the mayor of Sheridan, and I just wanted to come up and welcome you to the Sheridan Municipal Center. Thank you all for being here tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces, and I am just so grateful that you're all here and that you want to learn about the challenges of homelessness. So along with you, I'm interested in some new perspectives that we can get tonight. And I want to just recognize a couple of our council members who are also here. There's Don Smith here in the front row, Dallas Hall in the back. Thank you to both of you for your interest in this topic as well. And I will turn it over to Nellie to give another introduction.
Yo lo voy a hacer en español, so sí, se pueden poner sus audífonos para que me puedan escuchar. Solamente quiero darle la bienvenida a todas las personas que están aquí en persona y también al igual las que están con nosotros por medio del Zoom. Gracias por su interés en este tema que nos afecta a todos de una forma u otra. Quiero agradecer a Indira que está interpretando para que todos nos podamos comunicar con el idioma de nuestro corazón. Eso es algo súper importante para nosotros aquí en Sheridan y lo cual agradecemos que en este sitio podamos hablar nuestro idioma y nos podamos comunicar todos y entender. Pues muchas gracias a todos de nuevo por estar aquí y esperamos que juntos podamos cada quien poner un granito de arena para ayudar a este tema que nos está afectando a todos de una forma u otra. Gracias.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Nellie. Welcome, everybody. My name is Mike Sandgren. In my day job, I work at Wellspring Church. I'm a pastor over there. And then through that role, I have the privilege of leading a network that serves the Tri-Cities called Change the Trend. Change the Trend has been around since 2017, focusing on building collaboration around the issue of homelessness. And I just want to say personally, when we started the network, it was about 5 of us in a small office at a local church in Inglewood, and to see it grow to the amount of leaders and community members and stakeholders that are in a room like this this evening is really special and warms my heart to be able to participate in something like this with you all. I also want to say that an event like this is deeply important. And I want to thank you all for taking some time to be here, to join together and really to explore this issue of homelessness, especially as it relates to the community of Sheridan. We, over the past several months, have been doing kind of a tour of the Tri-Cities with events like this. We did one in Inglewood, we did one in Littleton, and now we're completing that tour tonight in Sheridan. And each of these events, we've branded them along the way, the challenges of homelessness. really exist for the purpose of bringing stakeholders together in this type of format to really wrap our minds together around who's working on homelessness in the respective community, who's working on homelessness in the region at large, and also what does homelessness feel like? What does homelessness feel like in the business sector, in the public sector, in the nonprofit sector, and most importantly, what does homelessness feel like for people who find themselves without a place to call home? And so that's what we're moving towards this evening. So we're going to take some time to hear an overview of some of the initiatives going on around homelessness in the region, as well as here in Sheridan. And then we'll engage towards the back end of our time, we'll engage a panel discussion with leaders right here from Sheridan and from all of those sectors that I just mentioned. And we'll be able to hear from them what their experience has been like around just what their engagement with homelessness has been. And so throughout all of it, my hope is that tonight will be a time that will be educational, will be informative for you. I also would challenge you to recognize that there are leaders and there are representatives from agencies, organizations, businesses, sectors that you might not know. And so I would challenge you to use this time as well to get to know, maybe leave here with one or two additional connections of stakeholders who want to see homelessness addressed. And then I also hope that you'll leave tonight with an imagination for how you as an individual or you as a representative of an agency can get deeper involved in addressing homelessness here in our community. I hope it will be empowering experience in that sense. Before we move into kind of an overview of who's working on homelessness, I want to take a minute just to thank some of our sponsors for putting on an event like this. First of all, the city of Sheridan has offered this space to host this event. And so Devin, Mayor Biter-Fleur, all of the administrative support staff here at Sheridan, thank you. Thank you for providing space for this. Can we give them a round of applause? I also want to recognize many of you grabbed a meal as you came in. Were those meals delicious? Those meals were provided by a local nonprofit here in Sheridan called Housed Working and Healthy. They've been around for several years now doing workforce development training for people moving out of homelessness in the field, in the culinary field. So the meals that you had for dinner tonight were actually prepared by their participants. And the bread was homemade, the sandwiches were homemade, prepared by Housed Working and Healthy. So Rita is here from Housed Working and Healthy. Can we give her and her team a round of applause? The South Metro Community Foundation has also been a sponsor of this event. Susan Thornton isn't able to be here, but we have a couple board members from the South Metro Community Foundation here, just behind the scenes helping plan and execute these events. All three of these events, actually, the South Metro Community Foundation has been at the table sponsoring. And so B.B. Kleinman, Paul Parrish, as well as a couple other board members who are here. Can we give the South Metro Community Foundation a round of applause as well? So who is working on homelessness? What does homelessness feel like in the region? I don't think that it's really a question anymore that homelessness is present in our community. But the question has really evolved into, what do we do about this? What do we do about homelessness? And who's working on homelessness? So I want to give a quick overview of a few key agencies who are stepping up to build a response to the issue. The first is Sheridan Rising. Many of you are familiar with Sheridan Rising. I've actually been really grateful to learn more about Sheridan Rising as an organization through the process of planning this event. And it was funny, I was planning to do kind of the overview of everything, and I've been chatting with Nellie around, Nellie, give me content to represent Sheridan Rising well. And the content she gave me blew me away with how much stuff Sheridan Rising is doing. So I said, there's no way I can represent you all well. So I'm going to actually ask Nellie if you would come back up and just give an overview of the work you and your team are doing at Sheridan Rising.
Thank you, Mike. I won't make it long, I promise. Otra vez me voy a cambiar a mi español. Creo que hace rato se me olvidó decir cuál era mi nombre. So, mi nombre es Nelly Limón, yo soy la directora ejecutiva para Sheridan Creciendo Unidos para la Equidad. Y lo que es Sheridan Creciendo Unidos para la Equidad es una organización de personas que viven aquí en Sheridan, jóvenes, adultos, que están trabajando para combatir la equidad de salud aquí en Sheridan. ¿Y cómo lo hacemos? Al desarrollar líderes en nuestra comunidad que puedan trabajar en los problemas que les están afectando a ellos y a sus familias. Las áreas en las que nos estamos enfocando para este año son en educación, programas y actividades para jóvenes, niños, adultos, en elecciones y en viviendas. Y aparte tenemos un grupo de jóvenes también que está trabajando muy activamente, muchos líderes jóvenes que están trabajando muy activamente en sus escuelas y en la comunidad. Y lo que estamos haciendo con vivienda, nosotros hemos tomado un año para escuchar todas las historias aquí en Sheridan de esas personas que están siendo afectadas por viviendas. Nos tomamos un año entero en escuchar y entender más acerca de cómo es que se mira el estar sin vivienda aquí en Sheridan. Y escuchar a las personas como los adultos jóvenes que están pasando por eso. So, tenemos mucha información, muchas historias de personas aquí en Sheridan que están pasando por eso. Y pues queremos seguir, ya tenemos sus historias y entonces ahorita toca ver cómo entre todas las organizaciones que están trabajando en vivienda, cómo podemos todos trabajar juntos para tener un mejor plan para ayudar a todas estas familias y a estos jóvenes. Algunas otras de las cosas que hemos hecho aquí en la comunidad ha sido el banco de comida durante el COVID también, cuando estuvimos ayudando a más de 300 familias cada semana que teníamos nuestro banco de comida abierto. Estamos proveyendo programas y actividades, como dije, para jóvenes, adultos y niños. Y pues sí, si quieren estar interesados en saber un poquito más acerca de nuestra organización, me pueden contactar a mí. Tenemos también atrás a Damar, ella es la representante del grupo de jóvenes. También tenemos a Andrea, que es nuestra organizadora comunitaria. Y pues también hay varias personas aquí que son de Sheridan Rising, so levanten su mano para que los conozcan y pueden contactarse con ellos si gustan conocer un poquito más del trabajo de Sheridan Rising.
Thank you, Nelly. The next group that's working on homelessness in the region is the network that I lead, Change the Trend. As I said, we've been around since 2017. We were birthed in the city of Inglewood, actually through a joint effort between the Inglewood Police Department and some key nonprofit leaders and faith leaders and city leaders. Sponsored a series of meetings, and at the end of the meetings, they said, show of hands, who'd be willing to start working on homelessness? And a few of us raised our hands and started meeting every Thursday morning, and we've been meeting every Thursday morning ever since. We decided to work on two pathways of long-term work. One, community engagement. We recognized that as a network, we had more of a platform than any one of our agencies did on their own. And so we just seek to steward that platform into putting on events like this, bringing further stakeholders into the mix and sharing our experience, some of the expertise that exists on the network around homelessness, and really engaging our community. And that's why through those efforts, we've seen this type of growth into events like this. The other pathway that we've put in front of ourselves is resource navigation. And so when we pre-pandemic, when we would meet in person, we would take every other week we would do what's actually we stumbled on what's called a best practice called case conferencing. We would take a list of clients that we all knew because we were all service providers. We all knew their names. We all knew their struggles. What we needed to do was get around a table and work together on how to serve them best. And so we would do that every other week. When the pandemic hit, we switched to a digital format and we blew up numerically to where we averaged 47 attendees per week on a Zoom call every Thursday morning. So we still meet weekly. We still do community engagement. Tonight is a manifestation of that. We still do resource navigation and actually have partnered. I'll get to this. Have been able to partner with the Tri-Cities Policy Group around moving in the direction of a more formalized navigation center, hopefully in the near future. So the Change the Trend has been really the organizing force on the ground level. And one of the things we realized we needed along the way was some organizing on the leadership level. And so that's where some of our elected officials, some of our city managers have really stepped up. Some of our chiefs of police have stepped up over the past several years and formed the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Group, and have actually invited the network and some other key leaders into that group. And that group, the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Group, started asking the question, what do we need to do from a top-down perspective around homelessness for the Tri-Cities? And so that group engaged a season of research, wrapping our minds collectively around the issue. That group contracted with a research institute at DU, the University of Denver, to do a demographic assessment of family homelessness as well as individual homelessness in the Tri-Cities. That group also sponsored a pestle analysis, a strategic planning tool to just gather data around the issue, kind of take a 3,000-foot view of what homelessness looks like, feels like in the community, how it affects different sectors. And then that group over the last 2 years has engaged a consultant to develop the Tri-Cities Homelessness Action Plan that was passed late last year. Actually passed, we're very proud of this, passed unanimously through all 3 city councils in the Tri-Cities, which speaks to the buy-in that this region has around the issue of homelessness. The plan has 4 categories. It has a category focused on some foundational work, doing some staffing up, making sure we're doing a good job of tracking data in real time around the issue, as well as using some of the data tracking tools that are available to us, such as the Homeless Management Information System, as well as making sure we're partnering up with some of the existing initiatives, even on a broader regional scope, including the Built for Zero initiative that the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative is taking on. So that foundational category is going to really build the strong foundation that we can work from moving forward. The second category is really focusing on the experience of individual adults, single adults who are experiencing chronic homelessness, and really asking the question, what do we need to do to serve that community? And so that category calls for navigation services, a navigation center. It calls for some coordinated outreach efforts, as well as some other initiatives. And then the third category, which is uniquely pertinent to Sheridan, is asking the question, what do we do about family homelessness? And it has a number of action items specifically tailored towards the experience of families who are experiencing homelessness in the region. And as we'll get into on our panel, that's been a unique desire, and Sheridan has really led the way in prioritizing the experience of family homelessness, which we're grateful for. And then the fourth category focuses on workforce development. So asking the question for the members of the homeless community who are in a place to re-enter the workforce, how are we supporting them on that journey? And so it calls for partnering with organizations like Bridge House and Cross Purpose, who are doing work around workforce development, and even in a housing and house working and healthy. Thank you, Rita. Around those initiatives. So partnering with some of those key leaders. And so through all of those 4 categories, what we're doing is building a collective response, building a holistic response to the issue. And we're proud of the foundation that's been built over the past few years. But it also means that the work is just beginning, that we're in the beginning phases of implementing this action plan. And so as we move forward, what we want to do is bring all of the right players to the table and delegate and really facilitate cross-sector collaboration, because that really is what it will take to move the needle and see this plan implemented in a comprehensive way. And in the midst of it, there are many service providers, there are many organizations, there's many human service workers, there's many folks in our law enforcement partners who are grappling with this issue on a day-to-day basis, even as we build this broader response. And so that's what I want to move into now, is really exploring what is that experience like, as well as some of these initiatives start to take root in our community, what progress are we seeing? What are we excited about? And also, what challenges are we still experiencing? And so with that, I'd like to invite our panelists up. We're gonna take a seat up here, just like you all are elected officials. And I'm gonna grab my laptop. And as our panelists come up, I want to direct your attention. We're gonna put a slide on the screen that I have some questions that I'm gonna ask our panelists. And then at the end, we'll be able to engage questions from all of you. But how we're going to structure it is we're going to put a list of our panelists' names so you can keep track of who is talking at any given time, as well as a phone number where you can text in any questions in real time. If you do have questions that you'd like our panelists to address at the end of our time together, feel free to text, and those are going to come to my laptop right up here, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as possible as we go. So panelists, what I'd love to do first is maybe start right here and just walk our way down and have you introduce yourselves and maybe say your name, the agency you represent, and just give us kind of the 3,000-foot view of what your role is in your respective agency.
My name is Eddie Canoza. Thank you. My name is Eddie Canoza. I am the facility supervisor at the Sheridan Recreation Center. So I represent South Suburban Parks and Recreation. I've been in the Sheridan area for a very long time, and I've seen a lot of changes, and it's been kind of like a second home to me. So I understand there are some challenges, and I think that's what has kept me here. Is I do appreciate the efforts that people make to try to improve this great little town. So that's about it, but I'm glad to be here.
If I could ask, make sure everybody, all the panelists, make sure you speak into a microphone. Even though everybody here can probably hear you, our translators online have trouble hearing unless you speak directly into the microphone.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. My name's Andrea Martin. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with All Health Network, and I'm the co-responder here in Sheridan. So my role is to ride alongside law enforcement on crisis response team. So I ride along and help out with crisis calls, suicide, mental health, substance use, homelessness, a number of different type of crises. Thank you.
My name is Nick Ventrella. I am the ETLAP at the Target in Sheridan, so the executive team leader of assets protection. So really what my job is dealing with a lot of safety stuff, security stuff at the store, as well as shortage. And on a very much so on a daily basis, we deal with homelessness, drug use, theft, all that kind of stuff. I actually deal with, see Angie quite a bit with some of the issues that we see with the Target. So I've been at the store for about 2.5 years now. And yeah, it's a unique experience, but I'm excited to be here with all these people to talk about this.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Jeff Martinez. I'm the chief of police for Sheridan. I've been the chief here for about 1.5 years after 25 years of working in Denver Police Department. So I bring some of the information about homelessness that I worked with in Denver and then come to Sheridan and compare the differences. So some of my answers, I might talk a little bit about each because they're drastically different, but nonetheless, they're both important. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Blythe Perry, and I'm the Executive Director at Integrated Family Community Services. And we've been in this community for 58 years, serving those in this area who with basic support, rental assistance, housing assistance, and specifically dealing with food insecurity. And I have been with Integrated Family Community Services for 25 years. So I'm happy to share my experiences and share what we do day to day in support of this community this evening. Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Alida Romero. Soy de Venezuela y hoy les voy a narrar mi historia de lo malo que es estar sin vivienda, lo muy preocupante. Gracias.
Hi, this is Jorge Scholz. I'm the homeless liaison / community specialist for the Sheridan School District. I'm also working in conjunction with innovative housing concepts. And what we're doing right now is that we are running a program. It's called the Next Step Second Generation Program that is targeted to our families who are living in the Sheridan City and who also have kids attending the Sheridan School District. And what we're doing is we're particularly providing rental assistance and kind of like getting ahead of homelessness in a sense that if we know a particular family is having some issues, either paying rent or there some medical emergency took place or some tragedy happening in the family, we can go ahead and start, helping them out, with at least a few months of rent, depending on each case scenario.
Thank you, panelists. We'll get into some questions here. I do want to just remind everybody, just direct your attention over to this screen. If you do have questions that you want to see our panelists address, the number is right up there that you can text that in. That'll come straight to my screen over here. For those of us who are joining us digitally, I know you may not be able to see the number. So if you have a notepad close, grab it because I'll read it to you. It's 720-772-6308. That's 720-772-6308. Again, feel free to text any questions to that number that you'd like to see our panelists address. In the meantime, I do want to thank all of you. This is a high capacity panel, and I'm excited to tap into all of just the collective knowledge that exists here and the different perspectives and different experiences. I want to start our questions. Alida, I know that, and Nelly, I may need some just translational help as well. Okay, perfect. I know that part of your story is actually having lived experience. Should we? Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I know that part of your experience is actually having lived experience of homelessness. And so I wonder if you could maybe give us a glimpse. Most of us can't really imagine what that experience might be like. And so maybe give us a glimpse on what that experience looked like for you and the journey into and out of homelessness and what that was like for you.
Gracias. ¿Tengo un límite de tiempo o puedo desarrollar la pregunta?
I might need some help with some. No time limit.
Okay.
A couple minutes.
Ok, bueno, trataré de ser breve. Como les dije, mi nombre es Alida Romero, soy de nacionalidad venezolana. Quisiera comenzar con el decirle, o quisiera sentirme que soy inmigrante. Lastimosamente no puedo tener ese calificativo.
Alida, could I interrupt for just one second? If you could go a little bit closer to the mic. Our interpreter on Zoom is just asking for that.
Ya.
You.
Ok, ¿ya? Bueno, vamos a repetir. Bueno, como se los dije, mi nombre es Alida, soy de Venezuela. Quisiera comenzar por aclararle o sentirme como inmigrante, pero inmigrar es cuando uno se proyecta a ir a otro país y planificar estudiar, trabajar, hacer familia. En mi caso, yo tuve que huir de mi país por persecuciones políticas. Decidí este país, que es un hermoso país, por todas las maravillas que uno puede oír y principalmente el derecho a la libertad. Pero ¿cuál es la realidad cuando uno llega aquí? Que no me encontré con política de Estado para recibir vivienda como refugiada. Aún uno teniendo disponibilidad económica para poder rentar, a mí las puertas se me cerraron. Se me fue muy difícil no hablar el idioma, venir con el trauma de persecución, aterrada. Bueno, aquí hay en el panel un equipo multidisciplinario que saben lo que es crisis de terror. Toqué muchas puertas, muchos alquileres y me cerraron. No, fue muy difícil. Nadie confiaba en mí porque es verdad, no puedo juzgarlo porque nadie me conoce, no conocen mi idioma, no conocen mi país, no conocen mi cultura, mis orígenes. Y fue muy difícil. Me sugerían que fuera a un refugio. Yo venía huyendo con una niña de 7 años y de venir de abandonar profesión. En mi país yo era abogado, docente, daba clase en una universidad militar y verme en este país que me ofrecían de trabajo era camarera, limpiar en hoteles, limpiar en restaurantes y no poder rentar muy, muy, muy difícil. Yo creo que hay que manejar otra política. No importa que no lo sometan a uno a un chequeo policial, una revisión y ver los antecedentes. Yo tengo una trayectoria profesional en mi país de 24 años de servicio en la administración pública y que aquí yo tenía que vivir, me dieron refugio, una familia mexicana fue la que se condolió de mí y me estuvo en su casa, habitando en la sala con mi hija. Es muy humillante porque uno no viene a eso. Uno viene a trabajar de forma decente y a buscar una condición de vida que mi país me robó. Yo no vine a este país a hacer posgrado ni a estudiar. Yo vine a darle a mi hija una calidad de vida. Y fue el impacto muy, muy duro no tener cómo alquilar, no tener una condición de vida decente. Pero tampoco todo es malo. Tuve esta familia que me abrió las puertas y fue en pleno invierno donde yo nunca había visto nieve, donde yo no sabía que el autobús pasaba cada hora y yo parada en una parada 30 minutos, 40 minutos. Hoy me río, señores, pero es muy fuerte. Y si aquí estamos, me gustaría ser parte de la fundación o para buscar ayudas a personas que están llegando, que puedan pasar por lo que yo pasé, evitarle o aliviarle este trago tan amargo.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Gracias.
So I think stories like that just form the foundation of our time together, right? And form the foundation of our conversation moving forward and build kind of the context within which we even think about engaging homelessness. Jorge, for you, one of the, as I mentioned, one of the unique dimensions on the issue here in Sheridan revolves around the prevalence of family homelessness, as Alita shared. I wonder if you could share, I know you're newer in your role, but I wonder if you can share even what you're starting to observe in your role in the schools around family homelessness, the prevalence of it, what that issue looks like within the schools.
Absolutely. The Sheridan School District, as you guys probably know, is a really small district, right? In comparison to Arapahoe, Littleton, Englewood, Denver. And so when I first started the role, the first thing that I wanted to know was how many families are qualified as a McKinney-Bento family, which is basically a code word for a family who is or has experienced homelessness. And when you looked at the numbers, when I first looked at the numbers, I was really amazed because I looked at 300 families in our district, and that's a lot. Part of my role at the very beginning, and as you probably know, I was trying to figure things out from the get-go and kind of like hit the ground running. But part of my role was to try to reach out to these guys and find out like, hey, at the beginning, you were identified as a McKinney-Bento family. Where are things at right now? How are you guys doing? What can we do to make it better? We, along with Innovative Housing, we applied for this grant. We were given a fund through the Colorado Department of Local Affairs that is helping us and giving us the ability to prevent homelessness from actually happening. And today, for the first quarter, Q1 of from January until March, I can safely say that we are doing a pretty good job. We have identified 15 families who do qualify for the grant. There is a total of an average of $3,500 that we have used for each family. We're looking at about 13 households who have received direct services. There are 32 kids who benefited from this program. And we're looking at 16 out of those children whose attendance has improved from 80% or lower to 80% or more. And 24 of those kids had grades of 2.0, which is basically a C minus below when the program, when we put in the services. And now we have 24 kiddos whose grades have gone up 2.0 and up. So it's a big task. And I'm really glad that I had a chance to work with Lindsay, who is the director of innovative housing, as well as Gideon Sinquero, who is the housing coordinator, and my boss, who is Jesus Escarza, who could not be here today. But it's the kind of thing that me personally, as I drove around Sheridan many times, as when I was working as a social worker for Denver Human Services, I interviewed hundreds of kids, especially, at the schools belonging the Denver area. I never really think about it. And now that I know that this is something that happens daily, that the issues, the tragedies, the human losses that take place, they're so great that what happens is that our families have to make a choice. And that choice is we either have to eat or we pay rent. And sometimes feeding your kids is very important. So I'm really happy that we are doing what we're doing. And hopefully, our numbers will be a lot better the next quarter and on and on and on. Thank you.
The work of the McKinney-Vento liaisons in all of the school districts around the region is deeply inspiring. I've personally just been amazed learning about the work that you all do. And speaking of inspiring work, I want to maybe shift our attention to Chief Martinez and Andrea and ask around the co-responder program. What I'd love to do, Chief, if you could give us an overview of the co-responder program and maybe why Sheridan moved in the direction of partnering to develop a co-responder program, as well as kind of what it looks like. And then Andrea, I'll have maybe a follow-up question for you.
Sure. So we moved to the full-time 40 hours a week, I should say, responder program last year. And Andrea, we had another person before Andrea that was here for 20 hours a week. I would like to take credit for this, but in all honesty, it was our mayor, our city manager, our city council who helped approve that contract coming into place prior to me coming here. It is for mental health conditions, which is something that I truly believe we need more and more help in law enforcement with, because a lot of the situations we deal with directly related to mental health or other conditions. We get training as law enforcement officers on how to deal with these issues, but by no means are we the experts. Andrea said it earlier, she is a licensed clinical person, social worker. She is licensed. She has 2 years of schooling on top of her other education that goes specifically towards this. So she helped us to greatly improve how we provide service to our community here in Sheridan. She is an absolute fantastic asset. We get her 40 hours per week. We wish we could even get her more than that, but we try to put her in the hours where we think have the best impact on those that would need her services. But I don't tell her often enough. I told her the other day, but publicly, she has made a huge difference in our law enforcement department in helping us to make some connections with people that sometimes would automatically be a negative interaction simply because of the uniform we wear and the badge we have, and they think that we are there to enforce something or to not help them. We always have offered services and we continue to do that, but it's much more effective when we have Andrea along with us. So that the program that we have in place right now is outstanding.
Andrea, how does the program work?
So kind of like I said in my introduction, basically I ride along with law enforcement. So I come in each day and go to briefing with the officers and jump in a car with one. And if there is a crisis call or a mental health call, that officer will go to that call specifically. But what I found is I'm needed on all calls. So for example, Nick knows me very well. You typically wouldn't go on a shoplift, but a lot of people that do shoplift tend to have substance abuse issues or maybe homeless or things like that. And so they need resources. And so even calls that you may not think you would need me on, you do. So I think it's effective. And like Chief said, I'm able to build a rapport with people in a way that is maybe not as threatening as having a gun on my belt, and being able to kind of connect with that person, see where they're at and meet them where they're at. And I think that that goes a long way into how the interaction with law enforcement goes from there on out.
What do you see? I think you touched on this. I'd love to hear you maybe zero in a little bit. What do you see as some of the connections between mental illness and homelessness in Sheridan?
So I believe mental illness and homelessness have a complicated relationship. There are individuals that prior to being homeless had a diagnosis of mental illness or a substance use disorder, and that may have played a large role in why they're homeless. Situations maybe where they lost a job or were unable to gain employment because of mental illness, maybe a lack of support system. There are other individuals that I believe developed mental illness after becoming homeless. And so research shows that being homeless increases rates of anxiety and depression, as well as substance use. I mean, you have to think about if you were homeless, you might, hey, maybe I will try that drug, or maybe, you know, I have nowhere to sleep, so I'm anxious, I'm scared, I'm worried about what's going to happen to me. And so that relationship is really complicated. But I'd like to say that I think there is a high percentage of people that are homeless that are because of situational or economic factors. And I think we don't take that into account enough. I think like Alita said, you know, she had a situational factor. You know, she's having to leave a country that in turmoil. And I think people deal with, you know, look at housing costs right now, things like that. That's a huge economic factor. COVID, unemployment rates skyrocketing, cuts to Social Security. So there are many reasons that people are homeless: divorce, death in a family. So it's not just mental illness, but I do think mental illness does play its role, but there are also many other factors why people are homeless.
Thank you. I'll put my cards on the table and say I'm a big fan of the co-responder program. I've been able to watch it develop in all 3 cities and see it be successful. I've shared this story before, but I'll share it quickly again. Several years ago, pre-COVID, I was just working one afternoon at Wellspring, and a gentleman came in who was on the streets, and he was excited because he was telling me, I'm signing a lease. I've been on the waiting list for housing. My name came up. I'm signing my lease this afternoon. And Monday afternoon, it was Tuesday. He didn't realize it was Tuesday. And when he found out that it was Tuesday, he lost it. He went into crisis because in his mind he had lost his housing. He had lost his chance to sign his lease, and he escalated beyond what I was equipped to deal with. And so I needed some external help. I didn't want to necessarily just call the police because I didn't want to get him in trouble, but I knew that the co-responder program existed, and so I called. It was we needed some immediate support, and I called for a co-responder, and the co-responder, one of your colleagues, showed up along with an Inglewood police officer, and they took him, instead of to jail, they took him to the All Health Crisis Center, and he spent a week there. He got reconnected with his case manager for housing, and he came back the next Sunday to Wellspring and said, I got reconnected with my apartment and I signed my lease. And it was a moment where that could have escalated to beyond, could have been destructive for him. And instead, a co-responder stepped in, got him the support that he needed, and got him connected to housing. And so the program is deeply effective. And it was a support to me in that situation that was beyond what I was equipped to handle. And it was ultimately a support to him to get him connected to his housing. Nick, I'd love to kind of pick your brain a little bit. In your role at Target, what you're paid to do is stop shoplifting.
Yeah.
But I can imagine January it's getting dark, it's cold. Somebody who's experiencing homelessness is trying to steal some supplies to stay warm at night. What's that experience like? And what are some of the tensions around your role in the business community navigating an issue like homelessness, wanting to be, you know, a supportive presence, but also having a responsibility to your employer?
Yeah, I think it's it's really complicated. So on one hand, like my job is to reduce shortage at a store. So I work in the Sheridan Target store. That's the only store I work at. So we have shortage numbers that come through every single year, and we're graded on those. So that's really my job. Where I get graded on is what does our shortage look like in our store. So on one hand, it's very black and white. Like someone steals, we stop them. We either get the merchandise back from just like talking with them, or we use law enforcement. So there's a variety of different ways that we can get that merchandise back. So like on paper, that's my job. But as you work in the field for long enough, like you realize like it's not black and white whatsoever. It's very, very gray. So like I can think of several examples off the top of my head where we stop someone for stealing camping supplies and they tell us like, I don't know where to sleep tonight. And I don't really have the resources being just an ETL target. Like I don't have those resources to be like, here's where you can stay, or here's what I can do for you. I just need the merchandise back. And that doesn't feel good. Like usually like in certain circumstances, yeah, it feels great to get that merchandise back because we saved the company loss, like I'm doing my job. And the other side, like it doesn't feel good to put that person in a situation. Or another basic example is like someone stealing food. So like they need that food to survive. So it's been a very complicated process, and where Target has a role for me to do. But on the other side, like I'm a human being as well. And I realize like these are situations and circumstances like I have not been through. So I can't put myself in their shoes and be like, I know what this feels like because I haven't done it. So it doesn't feel great. So we started slowly where if we do have someone that we believe is homeless or having some difficulties, we'll just like we call requisition, but basically get some food or some drink on Target's dime. So if they cooperate with us, we'll gladly do that. One really nice thing, which kind of transitions nicely, is that Sheridan PD has been a great resource for us. So I've worked in Colorado, I've worked in Aurora, and I've worked in Littleton with Jefferson County. And I will say by far and away, like having Andrea on the team and helping de-escalate some of those situations, which especially when someone's an addict or they might be high or might be coming down, like we deal with that quite a bit. And having them as a resource is really good for us, and just Sheridan Police in general. So like it's very nice for me to be able to use Sheridan PD as a resource, and I can tell them like, I don't want this person arrested, I don't want them getting in trouble, but they need help. And I feel confident calling dispatch and having Sheridan come out and them having the understanding is like, we're just going to talk to this person and getting the resources they need and not treat this like a traditional police officer may. So having those resources at our back are really great. And a couple months ago, Andrea actually introduced me to Mike, so via email, because we were just looking for some different creative things to do around homelessness. So getting them a couple like a food and a drink is a very temporary answer to the problem. It doesn't do much more past that once they consume that. So we were looking for a more creative strategy to combat homelessness in the area and really help the city of Sheridan in specific. So Mike and I started meeting maybe once a month and just kind of come up with some creative solutions. And something we're actually going to test hopefully very soon is what we're going to do is Mike is with Change the Trend has a lot of connections. And when people are sponsoring people who are transitioning out of homelessness, so what you just that scenario you just talked about, when they're getting their own place, they might not have the money to furnish the place or have dishes and things like that. So our intent is what we're going to do is Mike's gonna, when he finds a good person for this, he's going to send them over our way, and what we're going to have is a gift card for them. So they're going to be able to shop Target, buy like specific things like bedding, silverware, dishware, things like that to help set them up. So for me, that feels a lot better. Is like we're actually moving needles somewhere. So again, this hasn't quite started yet. We're hoping to start it soon, but like I'm happy that like we have the connection with Mike and some other people that I've met in Englewood and Sheridan area that we're starting to move a needle and hopefully in the right direction. And if this doesn't work, like we will try something else. Like I'm not okay with just us kicking these people to be someone else's problem. Like we need to help them. And I'm really happy that we have these connections in place here with Sheridan PD and Mike and Change the Trend.
Thanks, Nick. The tensions around homelessness are so prevalent, especially in a role like yours. And I deeply appreciate your willingness to step into that tension and you know, you don't have to engage compassionately, but you choose to. And I think that that's an example for a lot of community members and other stakeholders. I have two questions and then one final kind of speed round for all of our panelists. But I want to hear from Eddie and as well as Sandra. If kind of mine your expertise a little bit. Eddie, your role at the Sheridan Rec Center, obviously the Rec Center isn't necessarily a service provider, but it's a public space. And so I'd love to hear what steps you've taken to offer the Rec Center services to people experiencing homelessness, as well as maybe boundaries that you've had to set up and just how you've navigated the experience of engaging homelessness as well as the homeless community in your role at the Rec Center.
We are a recreation center. We're titled the recreation center, but we're almost like more like a community center. And I think, we do, or I try to do my best to work with the various groups in the community to support the different needs. We have a food pantry that we serve every Thursday to folks. And I do work close with Sheridan Rising. It's kind of interesting within the rec center. It's been kind of our goal to there's a lot of diversity, and I think that's a beautiful thing. So anybody that comes in there, everybody's kind of treated the same. So that's been kind of a big plus. As far as the homeless, it's been kind of interesting because what we see is a lot of people coming in for showers. And we've done everything in our power, well, almost, to keep the cost down so they can afford a shower. I have like a little slush fund put aside. So if somebody comes in and they don't have the full amount, we definitely will not turn them away at all. We'll just take some money out of that slush fund and make sure that they're able to take their shower. We've worked closely with the library, and this was more pre-pandemic than so much now. But we would have vouchers. So if somebody wasn't using the library and they kind of felt like, ooh, this person needs maybe a shower, then Kathleen at the library would give out a voucher. Then they would come to the rec center and give us a voucher. Then they'll be able to take a shower. So I think that's worked out well. I think the pandemic kind of has had a big impact on that, unfortunately. So that would be something that we're going to end up revisiting. It was kind of interesting, a little story here. A couple of weeks ago, we did have a couple that came in for a shower, and we helped them out. And then the one lady, she did go into crisis, and it was a little bit like, uh-oh, what do we do? So just given that, just that human element, just talking to that individual, and I have a staff person who is a certified lifeguard, and she's been kind of familiar with some of those situations. And we were just talking with the individual, and hats off to my staff on that one. She just did a great job, but she was able to talk the person down. We got her some water. She calmed down. She was doing a whole lot better by the end of the talk. But what was so interesting with that is, it was about a week later, this girl comes into the rec center, and she's like, I'm looking at her and I'm like, I know her, but I couldn't place her. Well, she was the one that went into crisis. And she explained to us that, I did get a job and I'm able to get my meds a little under control. And it was incredible. She was like a completely different person. And the thing that was so nice about it, my staff, they connected. So they even exchanged phone numbers. So, we'll see where that goes. But I mean, it was just kind of a nice moment that, I think sometimes you just need to step back and just, everybody's a person and everybody has value, and not to judge. And it worked out really well. So that's kind of it, really. It's the showering that's been probably our biggest interaction with folks that suffers from homelessness. And but we will not turn anybody away. So if they need a shower, we will make sure that they get a shower. So
that's beautiful. Thank you. Sandra, you lead one of the most robust nonprofits in the region over at IFCS. I wonder if you could share some of the trends that you're seeing, day in, day out, being a service provider for folks who are experiencing poverty and homelessness. What are some of the trends you're seeing? Is the issue, is your client base growing? Is it shrinking? What are you seeing from the standpoint of a service provider?
Absolutely. We are definitely seeing growth. So pre-pandemic, we were providing support, basic services to approximately 600 individuals per month. Now it's 6,000 a month So we have grown substantially. We are seeing many families who are doubled up, who are couch surfing, and they don't consider themselves homeless, but they are doubled up and for fear of entering a shelter. They don't want to do that. They feel unsafe. They want to protect their family. So we are providing support to those folks. We provide financial assistance in the way of rent and sometimes mortgage assistance to the severely rent burdened individual. And being rent burdened means that you are spending more than 30 to 50% of your salary, your paycheck, to provide housing for your family, and you have room for nothing else. So what our free food market does for those who come, they can come several times during the week for that. We are going to save them anywhere, depending on the size of their family, $140 to $400 on a visit to our food market. And then they can use that money saved for other necessities. So in any year, we receive requests in excess of $250,000 for rent assistance. We only have funding for $50,000. And so, we provide, we think, a robust referral, but many other agencies just like us run out of money so quickly. And so folks are struggling. So I don't know what to do about that. And of those 6,000 individuals that we're serving monthly, 1,000 of those individuals are unhoused in Arapahoe County. We have 6 entities that we provide meals for. We call it our single meal program. And they include Inglewood Library, Given Heart, Movement 5280, Safer Colorado, Greenwood Village PD, and Glendale PD. And we provide shelf-stable, easy to eat meals for those folks who are just struggling to make ends meet. So our job is a difficult one, and we see different trends all the time on how are they going to feed their family.
And it's such an important service that you all provide. You bring up an interesting point around the definition of homelessness in your comment about some of your clients being doubled up versus, out on the streets or in a car. Jorge could speak to this as well, of when you get into the homeless world, you'll find that there are different definitions around chronic homelessness. Looks a little bit different than family homelessness. And even if you take the definitions that the federal government uses, the Department of Education would count folks who are doubled up as experiencing homelessness. And my suspicion, you all can correct me if I'm wrong, is that a lot of the families that we see in this community who are experiencing homelessness might fall under that definition rather than maybe the definition of chronic homelessness. That's my suspicion. I think I'm right about that. I'm seeing you nodding.
Yes, that is correct. During my outreach, at least for the first 100 and so families that I have spoken to, they don't believe they were homeless until I kind of like explained them. Well, I mean, it's not a derogatory term. It's just that at this moment, the fact that you're living with your sister and she has her family, and in the Hispanic community, that's normal, multi-generational households, but under the definition of the Department of Education regarding homelessness, they're doubled up. And so a family of 4 living in 1 bedroom, they might, sometimes they don't see it as a big deal, but in general, what we're trying to do is let's educate you, let's give you some resources, let's make sure that, your kids have at least a good environment that they can all live in safely.
So last speed round, not necessarily speed, but I'd love to hear, this is an intentionally open-ended question, but I'd love to hear from all the panelists. We don't have to go in a certain order, just when you have an answer. What do you need from the other sectors of your community in order to either be the best version of yourself or do the best job at your respective role, especially as it relates to engaging homelessness? What do you need from the rest of the community? And as our panelists answer, this would be a great time to text in questions, because this will be our last round before we get to some of yours.
I can start with what I think we need is we need cooperation from amongst all our agencies, because sometimes we're doing the same thing twice, and although we have the best and the right intentions, I feel that if we have like a more like a streamlined process where we're all in the same page, when having meetings like this might help us get to that point, it could be very helpful for me at least.
And I think for integrated family community services, and I am getting better at doing this now, it would be more collaboration. That used to be a really bad word, but it's not so much anymore. More collaboration so that we can find the best services for each family that we're working with, because not every family and their situation is the same. So working together so we can make get the best outcome for that particular family.
¿Me permite? Yo creo que la educación es muy importante, educarnos como sociedad, como involucrarnos. Voy a hablar por mí, que yo desconocía de todos estos beneficios y pasé mucho trabajo, pasé mucha necesidad. Hoy en día puedo hablar con más tranquilidad, más seguridad, y me pongo a la orden para ser instrumento facilitador de orientar a cualquier persona que pase por esta situación, porque esto nos afecta emocionalmente muy fuerte. Pareciera que no, pero yo no dormía. Cuando logré hablar con muchas personas que me alquilaran un apartamento, conseguí un apartamento de un solo espacio. Mira, yo me le arrodillé al Señor, le di gracias, y cuando me mudé solo con un colchón y mi hija, me sentí como Paris Hilton. Y yo creo que con organismos, instituciones, sí se puede lograr un objetivo claro, siempre y cuando nosotros también pongamos, porque lo menos que yo quiero es ser una carga. Yo más bien quiero ser parte de la solución y no del problema.
Thank you.
We need a lot of what we currently have, which is the resources and the ability to have people to send it to. So a group like this and continuing the conversations, continuing to keep this on top priority, that helps us, because if we don't have resources, there's limited things that we can do, right? Of course, we'd have to do law enforcement and enforce the law. So if we have alternatives, if we have other things that we can do, we are always looking for that, because we have officers that are on our team right now that they have made bags. I have one particular officer that him and his wife put their own money in and have put bags together that include socks and blankets and a gift card and some of those things. And they didn't come to me and say, this is what we're doing. We have people that are compassionate, people that care, and they're out there looking to help people and do that. We have other officers who will find someone and start talking to them and buy them a meal. We have people with compassion that are doing those things. But what truly will help us continue to do this is having the resources for long-term solutions. And I'm thankful that we have conversations like this and for everything that everyone here has done.
Sure, why not? So I mean, I think there's a couple different things come to my mind, but one would be, so yesterday when I was handing out flyers to all of the different businesses in Sheridan and the River Point area, what I found a lot of was that like, people were like, this is really great. Like, we're having this conversation. Like, I want to be a part of it, but like, I don't think that businesses know where to go with it. So I went to one food business that said, yeah, every single night we have like food that we're going to throw away. And when someone comes by, like, we will give it to them. So I think, this conversation reaching to like the business areas and just like getting more of the businesses involved in the Sheridan area. I think a lot of them want to help, but they don't understand how they can. So if there's someone we can figure out a way to get like the businesses together in one of these meetings, I think it'd be a really cool opportunity, because like I said, a lot of them want to help, but they just don't know where to start or where to go. So I think it'd be really cool to see that continue.
That's a great, I want to pause right there and just highlight that that's a fantastic, sorry, that's a fantastic just stated need. And I know there's actually folks in the audience tonight who I've had that exact same conversation with around what does it look like tangibly for business partners to come to the table and find that pathway of engagement. Is it philanthropy? What does partnership look like? And I recognize that there's it might be less clear than, it's like a service provider's role. It's pretty clear, they're providing a service. But what does it look like for a for-profit partner to come to the table and really get involved? And to your point, we have partners who want to explore what that looks like. And I just want to highlight that you've stated a very good need.
I think what's happening right now, I think we're moving in a good direction. Being in the recreation end of it, we kind of see things a little bit differently. But again, and here in Sheridan, being more of a community center, you start seeing the different needs. And I think the support from groups like Sheridan Rising, that's been a blessing to kind of help identify some of those needs. Because in my mind, you're thinking weightlifting, racquetball, basketball, along those lines. And here we are, we have a food pantry. We're doing some after school programming, working with Sheridan Rising and doing some family nights and trying to expand some of that stuff that normally we don't really think about in recreation. So I appreciate that. So that input for me is very valuable.
Bus passes. That would be a great start. No, I'm just kidding. That would be, if you have some. No, I think Sandra brought up a good point. I think collaboration is key. I've learned a lot just being in this room today about what I'm going to do tomorrow. For instance, send people over to shower. So, but I think collaborating, doing community events, getting out there, coming together on these, this is a huge issue and a thing that we have to collaborate on. There's no one answer. Things that we've tried may not work. We try something else, but we do that by talking. So I think coming together and doing things like this are extremely effective. And bus passes. Thank you.
I agree with you on the bus passes. I think that's a fantastic way to end our formal panel discussion. And I think just the point you made around coming together and really just sharing information is deeply valuable. I think that's one of the things I've been surprised by, how valuable the network has been around just that information sharing capacity, but also on a deeper level, the trust building that happens in spaces like this. Not just learning from each other, but the vulnerability we've heard from our panelists, and as well as just the conversations that happened before and will happen afterwards around, hey, here's what we're struggling with around this issue. Here's what we bring to the table. Here's what we don't. And here are the questions we have that aren't answered yet. And what's happening through all of that is there's trust being built, and there's relationships being deepened, and there's a potential for greater collaboration moving forward. And so, panelists, I want to thank you. We're not done with you quite yet, because we do have a few questions I want to get to from the crowd. And
Mike?
we have a couple minutes.
Mike,
Did somebody ask?
I know I'm not a panelist, but can I weigh in on that last one?
Absolutely.
What do we need out there? I mean, we've got some phenomenal service providers here sitting in front of you that do great work. You know what we really need? It's housing. What homelessness boils down to is housing. We've got to house people better than we do. And that is an entire spectrum and a huge problem, right? But it boils down to a lot of these folks can't take advantage of these phenomenal services until they get a roof over their head and they feel secure, right? So I know that is a touchy thing. And Mike can speak to this. And in the Tri-Cities group, when I talk with other folks in Inglewood and Littleton, housing is a touchy political subject. All right, it is. And we got to get over it. We've got to get to the point where we've got to figure out how do we put more housing into all of our communities for these people. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in on that.
That's very well said, Devin. I think that was 25, 50 cents, more than 2. That does seem to be like the elephant in the room in a lot of conversations is, navigation towards something to navigate, service provision towards housing at the end of the day. And if the stock of housing isn't there, the service providers that are doing all of this incredible work are crippled, right? Questions from the crowd. This is a good one. We have about 10 minutes before we close. What are some of the aspects of this work to support the community to address homelessness that you find hope in, that you're the most hopeful about?
From where I sit, it's the change in the attitude that we've had over the years with law enforcement. We don't look at this so much as a crime as much as a situation, and the education and again, the empathy that the officers show and the way that we partner with others. That's what's hopeful, is that at least from our end, it's not something that always turns to enforcement. It's a ray of hope that we are looking to help people. And instead of looking when we show up, someone seeing as the enforcers, we are there as hopefully for some answers and hopefully for some help. So that's a gleam of hope from my end.
I think from my perspective, I think just talking about it and putting it out there and just making people kind of aware rather than just maybe kind of putting it underneath the carpet. And I never really thought getting into recreation that I would be dealing with some of the things that I've dealt with. So I think just having it out there is very important.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I think that's great. I think just all of us in this room having this conversation and all these different people from such different spectrums and different fields, like getting into a room or even just meeting people like Mike, like understanding these people out there, like trying to make an impact in the community, and how other people, like I had no idea about any of this until a couple months ago, and how many people there actually are that are looking to help and providing these services. So I think it's just really cool that we're getting more people involved in this conversation instead of just the service providers or just the city officials. Like we're getting more people involved is what we need.
And I think most people are empathetic because of the housing costs that, okay, I'm not necessarily lazy because I can't find a place to live. It's like, I can't afford it.
En mi punto de vista, yo creo que debemos unir más puntos. Debemos unir puntos porque ya estamos acá, estamos trabajando por una comunidad, viendo tantos conflictos, tantas necesidades, tantas carencias y teniendo herramientas. Yo creo que todos somos uno y debemos ayudarnos porque solo no podemos. Entonces ya estamos aquí y las relaciones son bilaterales, dando y dando, pero yo creo que debemos educar a la población. Yo me atreví a hablar, hay muchos que no lo hacen por pena, por temor, por creer que se van a burlar. Yo no, porque yo creo que uno tiene que ser un instrumento para motivar a otro en positivo, en pro y con ganas de ayudar a los demás.
Well said. We don't have to hear from everybody. I want to get to a couple other ones. I have a suspicion as to the source of this question, but what are some of the ways that you feel the Sheridan Library, as well as public libraries in general, could play a supportive role for your respective agencies?
I see the library as a huge resource for connection and like internet access for individuals who are homeless. I always recommend it. Every time I'm out, how do I get a hold of you? A lot of people don't have phones, right? So how do I follow up if I've given you resources? How do I ensure that you've been connected to those resources? Because my interaction may be 10 to 20 minutes with you initially. So I use the library completely. I literally the other day was on the phone with someone who lives in their car, and I was on Google talking to him and telling him, take a right here, take a left here, and got him to a library so that he could use the internet. So I think I use that mostly, at least in my realm, for that.
All right, let's do, I should have ended with the hope question. It's moderator error, my bad. I'll try to find one that's similar. This is a good one. What's one step that you and in your respective location, respective role, as well as just the community at large could do to further promote the dignity of families and individuals who are experiencing homelessness?
I think for IFCS is making sure that there are no barriers to services. People need to feel comfortable. They need to trust us. They need to know that we are going to help them take care of their family. So eliminate the barriers.
I mean, personally, from what I've been seeing, just changing the mindset of what the homelessness label is very important for people, because once they realize that this is something that, say, for example, our partnership with Innovative Housing can help you prevent or at least get you out of that situation, then it will no longer be an issue, and it will provide you an educational opportunity for you or the family to understand what they are going through. And when this happens again, that they can easily overcome when it comes to it.
I think for me, it's meeting people where they are and treating people with respect. I think that a lot of times our interactions with homeless can be rude or, thoughtless. And I think looking someone in the eye and treating them as a human and listening to them and meeting them exactly where they are can be a good first step.
I totally agree with that. And that was when we had that example a couple of weeks ago and the interaction with the staff and that individual. Yes, I think just treating them as an individual and just being kind, it went a long way. And it was incredible, the difference that that portrayed when she came in. It was incredible. So, and maybe, Amber, the staff person, made that difference. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Friends, can we have a round of applause for our panelists? Thank you all for your time. I deeply appreciate your willingness to share your expertise, share your experience, share your perspectives with us. I hope that this experience tonight has broadened your knowledge base around who's working on homelessness, what's going on around homelessness in the community of Sheridan, as well as the Tri-Cities region. I also hope that you've broadened your imagination around kind of what your role might be in moving into greater engagement with this issue. And then we're going to end here in a minute, but we have this room for some time. And so my challenge to you would be, rub shoulders with some of the folks, maybe some of the panelists. There are some more incredible experts sitting in the room here tonight. Hang out, get to know a couple new names, exchange business cards, learn about the work that's going on. I know I would love to talk about Change the Trend. I'd love to talk about the Tri-Cities Action Plan with anybody. And I know that there are representatives from a lot of different agencies who would love to have conversation and set up coffee, lunch meetings after this, Zoom meetings as we go forth. So hey, thank you all so much for taking time to be with us for this forum. I hope it was a productive time, and have a wonderful night. So thank you all.
If everybody could remember to return their receivers, if you have a translation receiver, return them to